Hey everyone. Today I'd like to read a story from Flying the Ointment, which is my new collection of short stories 2023, out from Apprentice House, Baltimore, Maryland. And this particular story is entitled I'm Not Finished Yet. And it's a story that is loosely based on a Diane Arbus photograph, which kind of depicts a scene of mundane suburban backyard America, and you'll kind of see what I do with it. So again, it's called I'm Not Finished Yet, and it's a kind of a shorter story. It appears early on in the collection. Dirk was playing in the baby pool behind us. He yelped, pretending he was a seal clapping for halibut entrails. I tried to tell him seals don't yelp, but I didn't want to explain too much regarding the intricacies of clapping or tail slapping, lest he start in on that also. Dirk was 5 at the time. This was way back when. I reclined there in that clunky piece of shit chaise lounge, our patchy lawn surrounding us. The weeds tickled my ankles. My ex reclined next to me, a little circular plastic table in the middle holding my iced tea, her vodka tonic. It was suffocating, swampy-like. I felt as if I was drowning in the air. My ex was humming that insipid Marshall Tucker Band song I didn't even like when it came out. There was no sense to any of this. We drank too much in those days. I kneaded my sweaty brow and closed my eyes. I imagined I was on the Alaskan tundra alone. I've always enjoyed solitude. But when I squinted, my left eye open, I was still in Virginia in July. Dirk's squeals were transmuting into screeches. I can only blame myself, my nether regions to be more precise. In retrospect, I fell more in lust with X. It wasn't love. I know that now. She was the filthiest woman I've ever met, and this was exciting to me, more than it should have been. She wore flimsy lingerie. She got off on dirty talk. She was, in theory at least, open to threesome possibilities. Growing up in a conservative, church-going household, X was like crack to my dowdy sense of ethics. I met X at a local restaurant, more a cafe than an actual dress-up and sit-down joint. She was in charge of managing the floor, even though you picked up your orders at the counter. I could never reconcile this contradiction. It seemed a job without a real purpose. X had a world-class smile, a helmet of platinum blonde hair right out of the Marilyn Monroe handbook. Her lips were full and red, and she knew how to move. I couldn't help myself. I wasn't used to doing anything on impulse. I was a very calculated kid. X brought out something in me I wasn't even aware of. By the 3rd or 4th date, we were sweaty with sexual intoxication, lunging at each other on the floor like marmosets in heat. 3 or 4 months later, we were shacking up. X was a rich girl, all that high-risk bullshit, but I didn't know that yet. She had a sizable trust fund, but it was cloaked behind her intent to live like a normal person. She was embarrassed by all of it. I still remember going curtain shopping with X at Kmart, looking at stacks of hideous, cheap curtains. X went right along with the charade. Why don't we get these, X said, pointing to some blue muslin ones. I shrugged. It was fine with me, really. What did I know? They're as pretty as any of the others. I didn't know she was playing house. Who does that? Living together so early on was a mistake. I know that for certain now. At the time, however, it made my imagination race. I never thought of myself as the kind of guy who would have a smoking hot living girlfriend, could have sex at a whim. There was nothing to it. I was in my own way playing house. Our apartment was a simple 1-bedroom in a small garden complex, and I was in awe of my freedom. A balcony overlooking a man-made lake seemed luxurious. We listened to the faint sounds of water lapping. As we were drinking or fucking, we would often hear ducks or geese flapping around. There was this sense that we were living on the edge of some watery world. I realized after a month or so with X, however, that dirty talk might be the only kind of talk we engaged in. At meals, we were mum, scraping our food around our plates, looking off in the near distance. Sorry, I'm being so quiet, she'd say. I'm just tired. This was a regular statement, a factual dictum. It's okay, I'd say. Me too. We took to watching television as we ate, old episodes of The Jeffersons or Taxi, something to lighten the sense of dread on the margins of our existence, something to drown out the silence. It felt as if we were constantly in a waiting room together. We'd make small talk, but the conversation would never go beneath the exterior. Until later on, I didn't know if she was a Republican or a Democrat. I always look forward to sleep, the one true escape. The problem with watching television as we ate was that our conversations began to revolve around the lives of fictional characters, since our own lives were so dull. At least we agreed on some things, however. No courtroom dramas. MASH was the best show running. Programs about couple squabbling were difficult to pull off. But then again, what else could be so privately exposed? Our relationship became painfully normal. She'd work at the cafe. I was employed as an assistant manager of a pet store. We usually came home reeking of gerbil pellets for some reason. She'd cook some overly processed food, Kraft mac and cheese or rice-a-roni, and we'd eat it with a glass of cheap wine or Budweiser. Then we'd drink more after that. After a year, however, we discovered vitamins. A friend of X gave her a tip on supplements and she became fixated. She'd come home from the health food store with a box of clattering pill jars, fish oil and folic acid and glucosamine. I didn't know what any of that stuff was and still don't. If we take all these, she said, we won't even need food that much. There's a ton of good stuff in these things. That doesn't sound healthy at all, I said. She squirreled her mouth. Well, what is food really? It's just vitamins and minerals. Why not just cut to the source? Are these vitamins or minerals? Not sure exactly. Well, if you're not sure, what's with the grand proclamations, I said. Give me a chance to look into all of it, will ya? I'm not finished yet. It's no wonder Dirk turned out like he did. 14 months after X discovered pills, she gave birth to our new son. It was oddly exhilarating to me at first. I was impressed by X's fecundity, for starters. And yet, I felt absolutely zero connection to Dirk. He was just this product, something emitted from her body like menses or urine. Only he was a living, breathing, crying, shitting tiny person for which we were suddenly responsible. He was just there, causing turmoil. X and I had a shared interest. We had something to talk about, Dirk. He was a question mark. Except we did little talking, neutrally that is. When we talked, we argued. She wanted everything for our son. My position was on the basis of pet store and cafe. We could only afford so much. This is when I found out about X's financial standing or lack thereof. Why did you keep this from me for so long? She didn't want to talk about it. She said, not every aspect of everything has to be verbalized. What's the mystery then? I don't want mystery, really, I said. I want clarity. I don't want to hash everything out. See what happens when we do? I don't know to what degree guilt motivated X, but soon after our lengthy financial row, X decided that she'd use her hidden pouch to settle us in a 3-bedroom colonial on the leafy side of town. We traded our watery patio for a backyard of pine bowers and an expansive green. I didn't complain. On one level, I was grateful, but at the time, and even more in retrospect, it was emasculating. My wife owed me. As a traditionalist, I was unmoored. If I was a drunkard, this would have been my opportunity to fall off the wagon. At odds with fatherhood, at odds with my exceedingly dull but pretty wife, I had little at home to look forward to other than the house, which was lovely. The windows were new. The wall-to-wall carpeting gave a hush to every moment. The airy house seemed constantly bathed in light, a gentle breeze, constantly blowing. And yet I was despondent. At the time, I told myself my misery was only temporary. That soon enough, X, Dirk, and I would be a real family rather than a coalition of separate dinky islands. It didn't happen. What did happen was that X grew more and more inward. metamorphosing into a shell for former self. We began eating separately, her and Dirk when they felt the urge. I'd fix myself something quick when I returned from home or scrounge for leftovers. I maintained an optimistic front. I would spout uplifting cliches. In counterpoint to X's interior withdrawal, I became Pollyanna. Reclining on the crappy chaise lounge in the middle of the lawn that sweltering day, I knew it was time to make a change. The problem, I was and still am averse to change. I watched the air ripple with heat. I don't like plants, X said. She sipped her vodka, keeping her eyes closed. That's why. I wasn't sure at first what the statement was in response to exactly. Then I realized about 20 minutes prior, I made a point that we should do something about the lawn's dire state, for our own aesthetics, if nothing else. This was her way, I guess, of saying no. How can anyone not like plants? I sat up. It just seemed inconceivable to me. It was tantamount to saying, I don't like life. Well, it's pretty easy, really, she said. She threw her arm over her head. Too much work. I didn't know what to say, but I knew what to do. I'm going to get a drink of water, I said. Want something? She almost imperceptibly shook her head. Her hair slashed across her face. As I walked into the house through the sodden air, I could feel the vile sweat glisten all over my body. Once I set foot in the cool kitchen, I poured myself a glass of tap water, drinking it as I walked upstairs. I pulled a new t-shirt on, slipped into my shoes, and grabbed my wallet and keys. I opened the front door and breathed again. This wasn't just change. I dropped an atomic bomb on my life. I'm now living in the nuclear fallout. Deep sixing one existence, however, does open up the possibility for another one. I not only left my wife and son, but also my job, my house, if I can use that possessive, and all of my things. Sometimes one has to go against one's very nature to find a better way. I'm back to square one. 33 years old, I'm living in an efficiency above an office supply store. I work at a garden center, answering questions mostly. I've met a younger woman, Kimberly, barista at a local coffee shop. She can tell me the difference between Sumatran and Peruvian roasts. I see Dirk once a month, and that's plenty for me. Haven't seen X since the day I walked inside for a drink of water. Kimberly is fascinated by my former life, almost as if she doesn't quite believe it existed. At night, when she rests in the crook of my arm, I'll tell her stories about X, minus the sexual details. Kimberly is curious. She finds the window into my previous life fascinating. She's also plain and a bit on the chubby side, but it's okay. Sex, that is something we're easing into. I'm not sure how many more chances I'll allow myself to have. I don't tell Kimberly about the vitamins. I now have my own different vitamins. Maybe someday I'll slip into my own skin.